Welcome to Vegas Programmers. Thank you for everybody that came out. It looks like we have literally like no seats left. I was a little nervous. They moved us from down there to up here, but looks like we have a perfect turnout. Oh, nope, you just screwed it up. You can just move that out of the seat there. Feel free to grab some pizza or whatever too. Oh yeah, there's a couch so you can take a nap while you watch the talk. Yeah. So today we have Joshua Copeland. Wait a minute, I'm talking to myself about the third person. That's strange. I'm going to be presenting tonight. I just wanted to announce a couple of things before we kick off into vibe coding. So first off, thank you to my awesome co-organizers, Cody and Rob. Without them, I would be probably pulling my hair out right now. They've been handling a lot of the backdoor stuff for me, getting the meetup updated on time. I know in the past it's just been like monthly meetup until like the day before, and then I'm like putting it on. So thank you guys, appreciate it. Thank you to Corporate Coworking. So they give us this space for free, which means let's respect the place. There's a trash can over here if you need to ditch some of your pizza or whatever, and just make sure you clean up after yourself when you leave. So thank you, Tony. And if you do want a day pass, they can hook you up. You just go on their website, go to contact, say that you're one of the Vegas programmers. Try it out for a day if you like it. This is a great place to work. I've done it actually during the summer just to get away from the kids when they're driving me crazy, throwing stuff against my door as I'm trying to have a meeting with clients. Anyway, so vibe coding. The whole inspiration for this talk was that this term can be kind of seen as two different ways. And we had like a talk probably a month or two ago with Cody and Rob kind of playing devil's advocate with each other. And I think the term vibing got brought up during that, right? And so it can be like coined as a positive thing, and it can also be seen as a negative thing. So I kind of wanted to throw out both sides of my experience with working with AI. And this is mainly going to highlight Claude Code, and I'm going to briefly touch on Devin AI at the end here. But 90% of the content is surrounded by Claude Code, which I felt has been the best so far of all the models I've tried. I've tried Copilot, Claude, ChatGPT, all the different ones, and Opus and Sonnet with Claude and Anthropic have given me some pretty sweet outputs. So let's kick right into it. So that's me. I returned that, by the way. I bought it and then knew there was a 7-day full money return policy because the day I bought it, my wife was like, "You paid how much for this?" I said, "Don't worry, I just want to try it out and I'm returning it right after." So it was cool though. It's just super heavy. I think once Apple comes out with the later one, maybe that would be sweet. I got it thousands. I don't know exactly. I forgot how much for. It was a lot. It was 3,000. That sounds about right. Yeah. I bought this pre-order at like 4 a.m. because I thought I was going to be able to resell it. You know what I mean? Like I was trying to flip it, but no. And actually there was an influencer in town who hit me up that wanted to buy it, but we just didn't link up in the right time. And then I saw him post a video a week later with him wearing one, so he apparently got hooked up somewhere else. Anyway. I have been programming since 2006. Actually, oddly enough, I started in PHP 3. Who here has PHP 3 or worked with PHP 3? Heck yeah, okay, heck yeah. I don't feel that old now. Yeah, so since then, PHP 3 has gone a long way, but wow, that was some spaghetti code. I remember having to like turn on object sharing or something really crazy in order to even get that code to work. I have been running a company called Remote DevForce since 2010. We basically do freelance software development. In fact, Jeremy's worked with me and a few others on projects and things like that. And yeah, been running this meetup for quite some time. And the whole reason I started the meetup, by the way, when I was going to a quote-unquote college called ITT Tech, which, yeah, you know. I went for programming, and there was no meetup in town. and I was really green, and how it would have killed to have a group of people I could have bounced ideas off of and learned, right? Because learning in a silo is no fun, and that was probably the worst mistake of my career in the beginning, is just working by myself. When you start working with other people, it's just a much better environment to be in. There are extra chairs down there if you wanted to just grab one and bring it up, or somebody can help her or something like that. That'd be awesome. Okay, so yeah, I was thinking about this during the AI thing, because it's like, you know, our kids, when they start programming, it's going to be nothing like what we had to deal with. When I was going to ITT back in 2007, 6, I don't remember, but it was a lot of books. Like there was like, maybe Stack Overflow was kind of there and Google was kind of there, but people weren't really using it for like solving or learning how to program. So you had to learn from books. In fact, to this day, I still have this book, the very first book I ever learned how to program in Blitz Basic, which is a dead language, which is awesome. Like I'm sure there's a lot of people who have been programming for like 30, 40 years, and the first language they use is defunct. So, but you had to dig through books. And then eventually there was things like Stack Overflow and Google, and you felt like it was a cheat code a little bit. You just got to throw something in Google, and then the worst thing you could do is just copy and paste the answer without knowing what it does, because sometimes those were filled with security holes, or it was like, you know, patching it not in the right way. So nowadays you have Claude Code, ChatGPT, Gemini, which is great. I'm going to talk about a couple of things with Gemini here at the end of the talk that I really like Gemini for. But this is like my go-to now. Anytime I'm learning a new language or I'm learning a new tool or framework, my first go-to now is using Gemini. Or if I want to bounce the ideas off of some other LLMs, I'll throw it into ChatGPT or Claude as well. Usually my go-to is Gemini if I'm like throwing in an error. I got some pretty good outputs with 2.5 Pro, which is what I pay for with Gemini. I've kind of been around the block with different LLMs, and I'm probably paying for some I don't even use anymore. I got to go through my subscriptions and see what I'm still paying for. But I think Jeremy was the one that told me about this. But what is vibe coding? So it's funny, like we're moving at such a crazy pace right now. It's like insane as far as the AI stuff is concerned. In fact, the last year at our meetup has been a lot of AI talks, just because the buzz and the amount of excitement and the amount of innovation coming out of LLMs and in conjunction with coding is astonishing. So just this year in February, this term vibe coding was kind of quote unquote coined. And it was from Andre Karpathy that said this on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. A new kind of coding where you fully give in to the vibes and embrace exponentials and forget that the code even exists. And yeah, I can see how you could feel like this, especially if you were to like, you know, pop some Molly or something and you're just sitting there. I haven't necessarily felt like I saw lava lamps when I'm using Claude, but I felt some vibes. Then just a month later, he says, you know, this vibe coding and stuff and these LLMs are great, but the minute you start to stray from the getting started tutorial, that's when you feel like you're just out in the middle of the woods, right? And I felt this too, which is the minute you're doing something that's creative, or the LLM doesn't have code to copy off of because what you're trying to build doesn't exist, or in our case where we're trying to build something that somewhat exists and it keeps getting confused, it keeps trying to pull from stuff and you keep having to course correct all the time with AI. So by the way, if anybody can find a laptop with a screen on the back. I was like, that had to be generated by AI. Yeah. I've seen them where they can flip, but that's neat. It could be. This could be the Mac 2030 model. We just don't know about it yet. Pair programming, yeah. One dude from the back and then the other guy or chick from the front, yeah. So the reality of production software is that there's so many moving parts. It's not like just go build me this. There's, you know, in fact, I'm dealing with it right now. Yeah, we got it working on our local machine. I spent 2 hours fighting with Let's Encrypt yesterday, just trying to get a stupid cert installed It was that zero SSL thing they added recently. I don't know. Anyway, actually, that's where I went wrong. So you have to think about software, especially when working with LLMs, in the idea of, let's say, personas. So think about each one of these as a persona in the sense of you have a front-end developer, a back-end developer. There's DevOps side of things, which has a myriad of things that go along with that. Async jobs, payment gateways, the analytics and monitoring that you should put in place. There's a ton of different things. So if you generically ask an LLM to go build me something, and you're not being compartmentalized saying build me a front end or build me a back end, you're just saying build me a website, sometimes you're not going to get as best of outputs as you are in being very specific about what you're trying to build. So treat the AI as you would a junior developer. This will give you the best results. So be more upfront with your planning. In fact, Jeremy and I were talking about this earlier. Like, he creates documents, entire documents listed out with a spec of exactly what he wants built, and then feeds that document into Claude. Rather than like me, I'm kind of a little lazy, where I'll just be like, build me this. And it goes in and kind of builds it, but doesn't really work that great, doesn't work the way I expected it to, but it's my fault. I wasn't explicit about the way I wanted it built. I had it in my head, I just didn't put it on paper. Some people I've heard actually use other LLMs to build the spec first. So you could go into Gemini, you can go into ChatGPT, build the spec there first, and then pump that into Claude. Or even maybe just work with Claude back and forth to generate your spec and then have it go run off and actually work on it. Try to set up guardrails, because if you don't set up guardrails, it's again going to go off the tracks. So by setting expectations about what you expect to be a successful run of it, or setting up more rules, which we can have a little fireside chat here at the end. I'd love to hear some of your folks' experience with Claude or even other LLMs, because I feel like this is one of the tripping points that a lot of people run into, is it kind of starting to do its own thing, getting in infinite loops and stuff like that. One thing I've heard even from the experts in this field who have built some of these models said that tell it to write clean code and have your linter and have those standards run every single time it generates code. So at the very end, you tell it, hey, go run the tests, go run the linter, clean up the code. Because if you don't explicitly tell it to go do that stuff, it's just going to generate code, and then you find out some of it doesn't pass a lint, or some of it needs to be reformatted because it's going all over the place or whatever. So again, just like you would a junior dev, so whether you do this through get hooks or whatever, you can set those sorts of things up. Run, and to emphasize the test part, also have it run the test before you start anything, so you have a baseline to know that it works before it actually even starts building stuff. And again, break up complex projects into smaller tasks. The way I've heard people trying to tackle this, we heard from Adam Englander, who tried to talk about this problem in his last AI talk, doing things like domain-driven development, which is great. It's kind of like a way to think about your project in these domains of the application. So you have your payment, or customer, things like that, broken up into, rather than just one generic service that kind of does everything. Try to break up your code more into domain-specific models and services. Or going to the nth degree, actually building individual microservices, which in my opinion seems like overkill, but if you're on a large team, this probably works quite well if you have individuals dedicated to a specific microservice. If it's just a handful of devs, maybe too much complications. Or in my case, with a lot of my pet projects, I just kind of use directory structures and then tell the LLM, like, in this directory or in this file, go make this change. Because if you're not telling it, if you're not giving it context as to where to go make those changes, it's going to just start going through your entire code base and grepping through it and looking for where to make the change. Most of the time, especially if you've been coding long enough, you kind of know where a bug might be or where code should go to live give it context like that, rather than just saying, go do this. So recently I signed up for the Max plan. This may seem like a lot of money, but it actually is not in comparison to you paying per token sort of deal.
Might be your first day or second day of a full day of work.
Yeah, I use Devin AI to write some front end stuff for me. And it was as simple as just like making an image kind of move around if the mouse moves around on the screen. I just wanted to be cool, and I'm like, oh, these like fancy JavaScript developers. Sometimes you go to websites and you're like, oh, this is cool. I wanted something cool like that. $150 later, it made something cool for me. But I probably could have done this with my Claude Max. Devin AI does have some interesting things we'll talk here about at the end. But there's also some competing software that might be better than Devin AI. So I kind of, and again, I have to give this talk in October at a conference, and it's funny because half of these slides might even be with how fast we're moving. I might have to like update it midway just because of how insane things are going. In fact, I've even heard conspiracies about how this plan might get sandbagged down the road because of just how good of a deal you're getting on this. So I don't know, but anyway, signed up for that. If you've never installed Claude Code before, it's quite simple. Don't feel like, it's overwhelming or whatever. Just dive in. It's not that bad. You just pretty much need npm. If you don't have npm, just go install something called mvm. That way you can switch around your versions, because you'll deal with that a lot if you're working on multiple projects. But get npm installed. You just run, you're not going to see that. Just run npm install. That's the command there. Once you have it installed, then you can run a command in your terminal called Claude. The first time you run it, it's just going to basically say, do you want dark mode or whatever? I tried these other ones. They blinded me. I just stuck with dark mode. So that's how you get vanilla Claude installed. Then it's like, hey, what do you want to do? So there's a $20 a month pro one. And like I said, I got the max one. Or you can do like the API. But anyway, if you sign up for the max plan, you'll just click this, well, not click, you'll hit enter, because you're working, by the way, you're completely working in CLI when you're kind of working with Claude Code. That's why it's called Cloud Code CLI. You'll pull up you have to connect your Claude Code instance. A web browser will pop up. You say, sure, authorize, and then you'll see login successful, and then Claude Code tells you go build something great. So then once you're all logged in, you'll see login successful, and you're ready to rock and roll. So the funny thing about like right after that step, it's like, by the way, be careful. It's like the security thing it gives you. And I'd love to talk here a little bit at the end, maybe with some of you folks too, with some input here. But I kind of stiffed through the security notes here. By no means I like dove deep, but some of the top level things I seen were things like be careful with what folders you give it access to. So right out the gate, wherever you run that Claude command, it's going to ask for permissions in that directory you're running it in, and all subdirectories. So just in my case, I have like a projects folder. I ran it in there. It has access to everything in there. My blast radius is kind of set to that, supposedly. There can be some more complicated security holes here. Let's say if you're copy pasting prompts from the internet, or you're using MCPs that are a little dodgy, you could run into some other security issues. Now, who here works for a company that's against using AI on their code bases? Oh, I feel bad for you, Rob. Yeah, you know what you're doing though, so it's not too bad, right? I know a couple of people who would love to use this stuff and actually, in some cases, go against what their company says and do it anyway, not on a company machine. And they get really pissed because in theory, this code is being kind of sent up to the LLM model. It's kind of getting stuffed into this massive brain, and in theory, could be somehow, let's say, siphoned off to another context, perhaps. Now, they say it can't happen, but we've seen with ChatGPT that has happened in the past. Not to say Claude that, I don't know if Claude has had that issue or not.
If you start writing API underscore, it'll start filling a key out for you. So I mean, it's coming from somewhere.
Right. So whether that's like a GitHub repo or maybe somebody else's code that got thrown up there, just be careful you're not stuffing in maybe secrets or things like that, or like super proprietary code or something. Maybe in that case, a microservice or something would be great, right? Like augment all of your, like, okay, AI doesn't go into this or whatever. But things like, there's like GitHub Copilot and other, like whatever your company kind of works with. There's even better ways, which is run locally. We'll talk about that here at the end. In fact, we had to talk about Olama in the past, but if you are security conscious, or you just don't have $200 a month to spend, I'll show you some ways to do it for free on your machine. All right, we talked about this already, but for best practices, so after the security thing, it kind of gave me this list of how to use Claude best. And the first one being, review the suggested changes before making an approval. So I'll show you here in a little bit of how Claude code works. But basically, you have this back and forth dialogue with it. So you tell it, go make this change. It'll say, okay, I'm going to make this edit. Are you cool with that? You say yes, no. Or, hey, maybe you can tell it to kind of stray off the path a little bit and make changes. Avoid piping untrusted content directly into Claude. Again, that goes back to just be careful about what code bases you're working in, what you're copying and pasting into things, what MCPs you're using. Generally, if you're kind of using, bigger projects, the chances are a little lower, but not impossible. Like there's still the possibility of things going wrong. So just be careful about what you're kind of copying from the internet. And anytime it's working in critical files, so let's say a payment processing service or something like that, really be careful about what it's making changes to there. Usually that's when you want to start getting nervous, is when it's like really touching critical parts of your application. Ideally, I don't follow this particularly, but I probably should, but use a VM or use a Docker container to run Claude in. In theory, if you use certain MCPs, it can kind of do stuff on your machine. So in theory, it could start actually interacting with like local drives on my network, or making changes to my Mac that I didn't expect. So just be a little careful. And we'll talk about how that can be really dangerous here at the end, but it's something fun that you can do as well. And then they have this bug thing. You can report a bug. So again, just to recap security, garbage in, garbage out. So you just want to make sure about what it's doing. Over time in software development, you'll have an eye for security holes or attack vectors and things like that. That also goes with writing good tests. So spend a good amount of time, and Claude does a really good job of writing documentation and tests. So take advantage of that. I always hated writing tests, and nowadays with Claude, that makes it a lot easier to generate tests. Review copied prompts. Like I said, whatever you're copying from the internet, just make sure you trust it or you read through it. Sometimes that can be difficult if you're using MCPs, but make sure that you kind of, the community as a whole trusts the MCP that you're installing. And the code that you have, make sure that you trust that as well. But again, you can only control so much of that. So once you actually get past that, then it'll say, do you want recommended settings or do you want to get fine-tuned? I just went ahead and clicked the recommended settings. And then this is where it asks, like, are you sure this directory I'm running in is cool? I'm going to have access to everything in here. Are you sure? And I said, yeah. And then this is basically your Claude Code input. Get used to this screen. You're going to see it a lot if you use Claude Code. So basically this right here, you're writing in your prompt. You can write / and you can pass in different commands to Claude Code to set certain things up, which we'll talk a bit about some of the high level ones here at the end. But this is where you're going to be working with Claude. Now again, when it comes to scoping out a task and stuff, don't be afraid to use a .md file to write a spec or something and then say, hey, Claude, go use this, and it'll read that. If it's a large prompt or something and you don't really want to work within the confines of just the CLI. And what I did for this talk is I basically asked it, if you could build something for a vibe coding talk to teach others how best to use Claude Code in PHP Laravel, what are some examples you would suggest? Which I literally wanted to make like AI help me write the talk and the code just to kind of see what it would come up with. And all these ideas sucked. So I said, that sucked. Those are all pretty lame. Can you think of something that speaks more to vibe coding and is edgier? I don't know why, but edgier is like some keyword. I feel like LLMs are like, okay, I'm going into ngrok mode or grok mode, you know. So it starts thinking a little. And I read through all of these, and the one that spoke to me the most was this meme stock trading bot. Yeah. So it came up with some really good ones, but the meme stock trading bot spoke well to me because both in the 2008 crash and the GameStop hype, I got sucked into it, made a lot of money, lost a lot of money. And so I thought this was kind of a neat idea. And so I said, let's go ahead and let's do that. Let's build the meme stock trader. Perfect choice that hits the sweet spot of chaos and technical sophistication. So here's how we build it live. And so again, I was very generic with my ask here. In the context of like existing code or something that you're actually going to throw into production, definitely be way more robust with your prompt than I was here. But for the sake of this talk, I just wanted to throw this. So kind of it broke down, you know, what I wanted and kind of did some back and forth with it. And I told it, okay, plan looks good, let's go. So it asked me what directory we want to start doing this in. I actually was like, hey, let's do it in this, vibe coding to the moon. And it's funny, you'll see, and when you start using Claude, this changes quite a bit. In fact, right before I left the house, my wife walked into my office and she sat down on my computer desk. And I kept telling her to hit enter for the talk because it kept saying, like, are you sure? And I was just like, hit enter. I was like, here, you're a coder now, you know? But it threw up a word called kerfuffling, which I thought was, but you'll see a lot of different ones here. So it's cute, but get used to it. You'll kind of see different ones all the time. But the first time I ran this, it was like, hey, I need your permission to do this, because it was going to go create this directory, and in iTerm, it didn't have permissions to do it. So I said, do you want to proceed? I'm going to make the directory. I said, yep, go for it. And so this is where it started running the composer create, Laravel. This is actually the command you use to get Laravel set up for the first time. And so again, in classic fashion, it's going to say, does this look good? Do you want to proceed? Yep. And then it started vibing, which is funny. It must have had this in its context that knew I was writing a vibe coding talk and decided to be cute and write vibing in this one. So it started building it. It was awesome. Last time I did this, I got stuck here, but let's see if I can get. So this is like at 80x speed right now. And I'm sitting here and I'm working with it. I'm reading what it's generating. And I'm basically hitting yes, 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 yes to the whole thing. It's basically making one by one the directories, the services, the code. It's going to scrape Reddit. So there's this Reddit scraping service it's building. And yeah, so kind of sitting here just working with it. You can see you'll have this kind of task list. This is quite common in Claude, where you'll see like its thinking process and how it's going to tackle a problem. And so it's kind of going through and just checking off each one, building these different services, models, the front end, the back end, all of this stuff. So yeah, it's running the seeder, the database. I think we're almost here at the end. And yeah, that was it. Last time I got stuck here. Let me see if I can get past this. Okay, it did. It got past it that time. So does it work? So I had it. I didn't give it any sort of like pushback. I just kind of let it vibe. And so what do we got? Well, we got a 404. So I'm like, oh crap.
They did make a 404 though.
Yeah.
Is this a custom 404?
So it didn't run it. It built it. I was, how do I even run this thing, right? So I actually went back to Claude. I was like, how do I run this thing? And I actually I told it like make a how to use MD file and like tell me how to start this thing. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll give you an explanation and all this good stuff. And so boom, it was working after that. And this is what it looked like. It was kind of cool. By the way, if anybody ever writes you something and there's more than 2 emojis in it, they used AI to write it. AI loves emojis. I don't know why, but I mean, it will overuse emojis like crazy. So it knows them all. Who knows? It might be a Gen Alpha model. I don't know. But yeah, the front end it made was quite impressive. But what I noticed is it didn't have anything in here. Like there was nothing populated. So I had to go and figure out how to run the command. And once I ran it, then sure enough, it populated some demo data here, which wasn't helpful because it was just like seeded data it threw into here. Because I think being up that much with just having it build would be quite impressive. I don't think this would do as well as it claims with the seed data. Yeah, so the command it made was called meme scrape, and that actually goes out to Reddit and then scrapes it, tries to find basically what posts have the most diamond hands and gorilla emojis or whatever, and thinks like, okay, this stock is really great to jump all into. Which, as I was looking at this list, I lost $1,000 in the market again recently, so I decided to tap out again because last time I threw 1,000, I made 80,000. This time, immediately lost 1,000. So okay, I learned my lesson again. By the way, I lost that 80,000. But Kava here was funny. Like right when I pulled this up, Wall Street Bets pinged me and said Kava. So I was tempted to throw another 1,000, but I told myself no. So. I should double check if I would have actually made money. I don't know. It was just weird. It's almost like the LLM. It's like Google or like, has anybody had like a Alexa in their house? They're talking about something, they go on Instagram, and all of a sudden you're seeing ads for it, and you're like, there's no way that thing's not listening to me right now. Like, there's creepy shit happening. I felt like this was going on a little bit. If I shorted it, I guess there's this thing like the sentiment, right? I guess Kava was saying would go up. It didn't go up, though. You're saying it went down, so this thing doesn't work.
It could be that it's a good sentiment because they're happy about what happened last week.
Yeah.
That's what you're hearing the news afterwards.
It's great. Wall Street Bets. That's its main. This was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. Okay. Yeah. What I learned from Wall Street Bets is do the opposite of whatever people on there is saying, actually, and you'll make a lot of money.
It went from 85 to 70 in one day.
Yeah. I should have shorted it, yeah. So, one of the things that it said to do is it needs to run this artisan command every 30 minutes to go scrape Reddit and to like determine whether it's going to go trade something or not. But I don't have cron on my Mac, so I was like, hey, again, this is where AI is great. Like back in the day, before AI or anything, like you had to become somewhat knowledgeable. Mind you, it does, but it's not the recommended way to run a task on a Mac. I think there is a way you can get cron running. You have to install cron-d, I think, in order to do it. I don't think it's out of the box. It could be, but it's not the recommended way. It's this thing called launchd that you have to like create a task to actually go do. So again, I'm no expert in launchd. I've never used it before, and this kind of rings true back to a couple of other things I ran into where I knew nothing about. For example, like Azure pipelines. I had to write pipelines in Azure. I've never written pipelines in Azure before. I've written them in GitHub and GitLab before. And I asked AI, hey, build me this in Azure, and it generated 90% of it. There was one thing in there that it hallucinated, and like that command never existed in Azure pipelines. And I told AI like, hey, you made this up, and it was like, oh, sorry about that. And then it actually gave me something that did work. But I have that feeling with AI a lot. It'll get you 80% of the way there, and then it takes that 20% to get it across the finish line. So you still need to end up reading docs or whatever. But this is where we'll get into MCPs and other things that you can kind of leverage to make the model a little bit more of a domain expert in certain things that you're working with. I basically told it, can you make this launchd thing to go run this on my machine every 30 minutes? So it made this install launchd, and there's this launchd task it built. So here it is right here, and then runs every 30 minutes. It'll run this artisan command, and it's like, do you want to install it? I said, sure. And so we're going to now kind of go into some other ways to make Claude even more powerful. And then I'll jump back over to the stuff here in a little bit. But one thing I ran into when I was really digging on YouTube for some good Claude content was something called Super Claude. Super Claude basically has a bunch of different MCPs that you can leverage, and it is kind of the bee's knees when it comes to turning your vanilla Claude into something that's a little bit more powerful when it comes to building software. So what Super Claude essentially has is it has the idea of personas. So Super Claude will have an architect, a front end, back end, analyzer, security, and scribe for documentation. Personas. So it has these different personas built into it that it will automatically switch to depending on what it needs to go build. So if it needs to architect something, it throws its architect hat on. If it needs to go do some React or front end stuff, it throws its front end hat on. Kind of has these different abilities to switch different personas. Then it also has Context 7, which has the ability to go fetch the latest and greatest documentation on specific frameworks or libraries or whatever you're using essentially. So the problem with a lot of these LLMs is they were built a couple of years ago because it takes so long for them to actually go build these models that they're outdated by the time they come out. With the Context 7 MCP, it helps leverage it with like what's going on today. So that way it can kind of give you answers that work in the modern day. And then there's the sequential thinking MCP, which Jeremy, you were the one that actually told me about this that I started messing with. It helps Claude think in more complex multi-step thinking. So rather than just thinking linearly. There's also this Magic MCP, which helps it generate modern UI components. And then there's the Playwright MCP, which is awesome. Like before Playwright, I was using a lot of things to try to do browser automation. So like scraping. I've been scraping. Gosh, I'm so sick of scraping, but it's just kind of a part of my world. But I built another scraper recently for eBay, but scraping with Playwright is by far 1,000 times better than a lot of things I've used in the past. I've used like Panther, Selenium, just like Google straight up, like the Chrome. And Playwright by far is awesome because you can write browser automation testing with it and have AI kind of build those tests for you, even to where the point of Claude's literally using Playwright to go click on the website to debug things and actually use the application it built, which seems a little dangerous. I always wondered if it's going to start like doing things that aren't cool on my machine, but starting to hack into the NSA, I got a knock on the door or something. I don't know. It was LLM, bro. It wasn't me. To install Super Claude, it's pretty darn easy. You install UV. UV is basically the Python equivalent of MVM to install Python, different versions of Python. So you install this UV, which allows you to get different versions of Python, and then add Python 3, run Super Claude, install, I think through pip or some magic, then boom, it gets that installed. And then right when you run the Super Claude installation, it tells you what type of installation do you want. You want core or quick? I just did quick. And after you're done installing Super Claude, it's not completely done. This is where you have to actually go install the MCP servers. So these are the 4 MCP servers I just mentioned. You have Context 7, Sequential Thinking, the Magic UI one, and then Playwright. Once you've got those MCPs installed, now Claude has the ability to go into these specific MCPs and do some real cool stuff. So once you have Super Claude, you get all of these neat commands in Claude CLI. So if you just write /sc, meaning Super Claude, colon, and then one of these, it helps the AI model to think more precisely in what you're trying to accomplish. For example, are you trying to just analyze the code base? Which we'll talk more about that here in a second. That's a good one. Build, design, what are you trying to accomplish, sort of thing. So document, do you want to commit stuff, like this sort of deal. I've even heard of someone taking their, I'm not sure if they're with the Claude team or whatever, but they're like super expert in this. By no means I'm an expert, but they built like this GitHub action that kind of made this into a circle. So it like ran, when you push the code, it would run a bunch of these things in line in your pipeline to help you make sure that whatever you just committed actually is going to be best to commit, or would give you kind of output. So some of these can be super useful, like I said, the analyzed one. If you want to read more about Claude's individual commands, the flags you can pass, or the personas you can do, you can read more about that in the docs directory under Super Claude. However, it pretty much just says like, you don't need to pass in flags or personas, although you can force it to do that. Super Claude will automatically switch personas from architect to front end to back end, whatever, based on the task it needs to do. But if you want to be explicit, you can. So after I got the Super Claude installed, I said, this is great, but when I ran that meme stock thing, all the prices were 0. So there was a bug out of the gate. Like, even though it scraped and it found a bunch of stocks, what I noticed is none of the stock prices were updated. It just said 0 all the way down the board. So I said, there's a problem. And I would just want to point something out here. Personally, me, if I were to go fix this without AI, the first place I would look would be in the scrape Reddit PHP command. If you use this @ symbol, that provides context. So anytime you use the @ symbol and you provide a directory or a specific file, you're telling the AI, hey, go look here first. So again, it doesn't have to go use a bunch of tokens to look at all of your files and directories. Again, you're thinking like a programmer, where would I go to first look if I need to get this to get fixed or whatever. So try to be a little bit more specific about what you're going to do. And so after I told it, hey, this is not pulling current stock prices, sure enough, after running this, it did get it to work. And it added, so it uses Playwright, because I just installed the Playwright MCP. Now it uses Playwright to scrape Yahoo for stock prices, which worked. It was actually quite impressive, because I remember trying to scrape Yahoo probably like 10 years ago, and that was a massive failure. It even came up with this like alternative way using this Polygon API, which I imagine if eventually I got throttled or Yahoo blocked me from scraping stuff, it kind of gave me a plan B out of the gate too, which was kind of neat that it already thought ahead of that. So I ran that after I got the Yahoo stuff, and it still wasn't working, okay? So I'm like, gosh, what's going on here? So I personally went into the code, and I started looking myself as to, okay, why aren't the prices updating? And the first thing I saw, I looked at the database, there's a stock prices table. I looked in there, and I saw this is_track boolean. And I said, that's weird because all of these are like 0, they should be 1. So I knew something was up. I just basically, again, trying to be explicit, and I used the Super Claude troubleshoot command. Okay, again, using Super Claude, now I'm telling it, hey, go troubleshoot this issue. Stock prices aren't updating. I think it might have something to do with this specific thing. Again, that's where a human helping the AI, you're going to get some better output. And it said, sure enough, yeah, you're probably right. And then started running the command, which bombed out. But it then went and found that the prices did update. So sure enough, voila, we've actually got prices in there. So that was awesome. And mind you, I have not changed one line of code in any of this manually. I've used Claude 100% to write. Now again, I'm guiding it in what to do, but still, it's impressive for what it was able to pull off without me actually having to write a single line. A little scary too, to be quite honest. Eventually, if you're a heavy user of Claude, the way that the Code Max plan works is the minute you say Claude, go do this, you have a 5-hour window, and that resets every 5 hours. You probably know this a little bit better than I, but eventually, if you're using Claude, the 4.1 Opus, which by far is the best model that they have, eventually you're going to hit some sort of cap, meaning like, hey, you've used our good model too much. We're going to bump you down now to Sonnet 4, which is kind of their, previous model. So just be aware. In fact, I heard about this today, but if you hit this 4.1 cap and you see in Claude, it's like, hey, you hit your usage limit, we're dropping to 4. You have to go back and run /model to switch it back to 4.1 the next day. Otherwise, it'll just stay on Sonnet 4. And then you'll be like, how come Claude all of a sudden is like dumber? And it's because it switched the models and it didn't switch it back for you. So just be a little bit more like thoughtful about this. What's funny is in fact, there's a slide here I wanted to throw in because I was kind of curious about the models, and so I went to Anthropic's website. And what was funny is at the very top of this page, it basically says, if you're writing code, just go use Haiku. Which then I did a bunch of cross-checking. Everybody's like, Haiku sucks, use Opus. I think the reason Anthropic's trying to throw you into Haiku is just because they don't want a bunch of people using Opus, because it's probably like being capped out all the time. But other people who are experts in this say, use the latest and greatest model. If you get throttled and you go to Sonnet 4, that's fine. There are some trigger words I'm going to teach you to make it think hard. So this is literally built into, I wish I screenshotted this. I did not. Shoot. I will go do that later. I found a Reddit post that somebody actually went into the Claude Code NPM package, and inside of Claude, in their open source code, they actually search your prompt for these words. It's funny, but it like has these hard breaks where it's like, if you use the word think, you get around 4,000 tokens of their AI compute power. If you say, hey, think hard about this problem, then it actually goes to 10,000. And if you use the word think harder or ultra think, there are other words, by the way, other than just think hard. You can say like mega think. I don't know who came up with those, but you'll literally see this if statement in Claude that says, these list of words, go use 4,000. This list of words, go use 10,000. If they use think harder or mega think, I think it was, or ultra think, go use 32,000. So with that said, if you do get rate limited, or let's say you're on like the cheaper plan or whatever, and you just have Sonnet, I've heard from experts that Sonnet 4 on think harder sometimes produces just as good, if not better, results than Opus at its basic think level. Now, if you want to supercharge, Opus 4 on think harder probably is the best that you can get out of it. But again, you're going to hit your cap super quick too if you do that. So again, going back to Super Claude, I use this analyze, which by the way, if you do want to if you have an existing code base at work or whatever, and you go to your boss and you say, hey, are you cool with me running this analyze thing? It's not going to change any code. It's literally just going to go through and analyze our code and give us recommendations, which is kind of neat. So what I said is think hard about how to improve the code base using this analyze Super Claude command. And funny enough, I started using the sequential think MCP. You'll see it throughout the running of Claude. Anytime it starts to use an MCP, it'll tell you, oh, I'm doing this, and it has a thought, and it kind of helps spread out the load to be able to kind of think deeper about an issue or whatever. And at the end of this, it was kind of interesting. The analysis that it gives you, by the way, this is like one of the GitHub actions that you can kind of write into your pipeline, is have it go analyze the code that a developer just did. You don't need to say analyze the whole project. You can say any new code, go analyze it. And it'll give you what it thinks about that code. In my case, I just gave it the whole meme stock project and said, go analyze this entire project. It said it's a functional prototype with significant technical debt. Bro, you wrote that code. You're telling me you already wrote a project with technical debt? That's hilarious. Then it told me all of these like critical issues. I have no rate limiting, some basic things, CSRF, whatever. It's just a pet project, obviously not a big deal. But you could probably see how some of these could make you think a little bit differently about a production project. It might catch something that no developer in the entire company has caught before because it's using 1,000 brains and not your one, right? And then so like this is a giant list of stuff it gives you, but one of the funny things I saw is it like gave me this roadmap on how to make the project better, which was like telling me work on this for 2 months. Like I'm not working on this meme stock thing for 2 months, but it was hilarious. It was like, here's the effort. Week 1 to week 2, stabilize the project, write the foundation, then get performance nailed down. I mean, whole 2-month plan for this. I'm like, aren't you supposed to be like Claude Code and could do this in like 2 hours? But anyway, I thought that was interesting. It gives you like a whole runway, if you will, for the project itself. I talked about the flags and stuff. You don't really need to worry about any of this stuff, but if you do want to dive deeper into Claude Code or Super Claude, you can take a look at some of these flags. You can see here, you can kind of be a little bit more explicit with certain things like build. You want to build an API. I want to use test-driven development, TDD. I want code coverage and use the persona backend hat, like because I'm building a backend API. So you can kind of pass in these personas and things, but again, you don't need to. It will automatically switch for you. But if you know you're running a specific thing that's front end, it's probably a good idea to just pass in the flag. So if you want to read more about it, definitely go check out all the flags and stuff. There's a ton of them, and I haven't been able to really review them all. We're getting close to the end here. The Claude MD file, get used to this because this is basically the pre-prompt that your project will have, and it is suggested that if you're working at a company in a code base, create a Claude MD file in the project, and that Claude MD file is committed and shared with all of the other developers on the team. This can be helpful, like in some cases where you have, let's say, a specific bash file that runs certain commands, and Claude decides to always go do its own thing and doesn't realize that there's all these built-in commands already to do that stuff. In the Claude MD file, you can kind of pre-prompt it, say, go look in here first to make sure something doesn't already exist, and give it some context. But again, context is king when it comes to working with these LLMs. If you're in a brand, or if you're in an existing code base that's never had Claude touch it before, run /init, and then you'll go through the setup process where this Claude MD file will be generated for you based on the project that you're working in. You can also create individual Claude MD files in subdirectories. So this is more helpful, like if you have a front-end directory and a back-end directory, and you have specific commands in each, you can spread that logic into different directories going deeper and deeper into the project. So at the end, you may end up with a bunch of different MD files that are kind of stored in the memory of Claude. At any point when you want to see what Claude has in memory, you can just run /memory. It's one of the commands that come built with Claude. And it'll tell you everything that it has in memory every time it runs a prompt. Anytime you tell it to do something, all of these things are built into its context. So you can see like the .claude directory, that's where Super Claude installed everything. That way if I run in some other project, in my home directory I have a .claude hidden folder that has all of my Super Claude prompts. So these are basically what tells Claude about the playwright MCP and the sequential thinking and all of the rules and things like that. So SuperClaude basically just stuffs all of these into your home directory. That way they can be shared throughout. But if you do run into some weirdness with SuperClaude, maybe go check one of these .md files and you can change it or modify it at a higher level. So another cool thing is it didn't work in JetBrains, but it did work in my just regular iTerm2 terminal, is if you get an error, you can screenshot the website, using whatever, like Shift-Command-3, like on Mac, or on Windows, what is it, Control-Shift-S to screenshot. You can just literally screenshot your browser or the error that you're getting. Simply drag the image over into your CLI, and we'll upload that image to Claude, and Claude will actually go look at that image and give you some insight. So, for example, it told me what it was seeing here, but this can be super helpful if you get an error, rather than copy and pasting the error, or the error is complex, you can just copy that. I would give it some more context other than me just dragging the image in here, but can be helpful rather than trying to explain what you're seeing. Literally give it what you're seeing. I just came across this today. If you're not in our Discord for Vegas programmers, join, because one of the devs, a super smart guy, posted this the other day, and I was like, oh, I'm going to throw a slide up about that because this is pretty neat. If you work in Laravel, take a look at Laravel Boost. I just installed it today, and actually it's quite good. And it does have guardrails up, meaning when I was running, I installed this Laravel Boost MCP, and it will restrict the queries it does to only selects. So it kind of is built in that it's not going to go drop or insert stuff into the database. It's a read-only deal. So the key advantages are things like, in Laravel specifically, application setup, installed packages and versions of Laravel, which obviously have its own differences between all the versions, and provides some better context to give it accurate assistance rather than just generic advice to the model. So basically, if you're working in Laravel, this is probably a good idea to install before using Claude. Jeremy actually gave me these because he's been using Claude more than I have. So, and again, at the end here, I'd love to hear from some of you who maybe have used Claude and can help improve this talk. But if you're new to Claude, pay attention, right? Just because you're not typing anything doesn't mean that the things it's going to commit weren't going to look like you wrote it. So understand, like, as you're using this thing and it's telling you, hey, I'm going to go change this file, especially if you're working in a production code base, not some meme stock generator. Read what it's doing. Again, just going back to the past where we were copying and pasting stuff from Stack Overflow, that's a mistake. You want to read what it's doing. Understand the fix. Don't just blindly commit the fix. It's the same situation with AI. Learn to control your context. So again, using those guardrails and improving upon your Claude MD file. That way, like if you run into something over and over in Claude, help course correct future runs by adding guardrails into that Claude MD, simply by just putting in like, hey, don't do this, do that. Certain things like that will help pre-prompt the Claude to help run in a more efficient way. I've even heard, and I got to make a slide about this, but if you hit escape twice when you have Claude open, you'll see this whole list of every time you asked it something. If you ever feel like things are getting off track and it's starting to get dumber or making changes that are silly, hit escape twice, go back up to a session where you thought it was making decisions correctly, and start back at that. It's kind of like this, when you have all these forks in the road, you make the wrong turn, hit escape twice, go back to course correct, go back into the memory of the session where things were going right, and start back from that point. And then, again, read the docs, stay up to date. It's so tough. This is the hardest problem. Like, I literally just learned about this Laravel boosting today, It's a lot to deal with, but it's fun. And if you're not using this stuff, I feel like you're going to get left in the dust. There's some really, I'm not going to say who, but there's some really big figures in the programming space that are adamantly, and I'm not talking about you, Rob, that are adamantly against AI, right? They think like this stuff sucks, blah, blah, blah. And man, I have done what would have took me 8 hours before in 8 minutes. I mean, how can you know, time is precious. We're only here on this earth for so long. If something's gonna help me get something done quicker than others, I'm gonna use it. Mind you, again, within guardrails. If your company's against this stuff, that's where some other cool things I'm gonna show you here in a second can come into play. Oh, and you told me about this YOLO mode. So if you're just like, I should have used this out the gate for this meme stock thing, but YOLO mode basically is you just say, don't ask me for any permissions, don't ask me yes or no, just go do it.
It sounds dangerous, but it's like 100 times more valuable. I only use it this way.
Coming from somebody that's still developing in Devin is not in production yet. Yeah, but yeah, no,
No, I would never use Claude in production, period. So you build and then you commit things, and everything that gets committed goes through your eyes.
Staging environment, test there first. Yeah, exactly, right? There's
Pseudo first.
I'll pull it up here at the end. I'll try and dig it up, but basically, I'm going to save that for the end because I have a really cool story here at the end. Not cool, but interesting. By the way, this here, like if you want to sandbox, again, I'm running Claude just on my Mac. If you're nervous about your machine, it's a work machine or something, try to run Claude in a Docker, or like if you're on Windows, WSL2, like the Ubuntu thing underneath the hood on Windows. Like you can install Claude somewhere else. That way, if it does decide to go off the rails, it's not going to break your whole machine, right? That's probably wise, even though, again, I didn't listen to that. But YOLO mode. Yeah, don't try this at home. This is like the jackass version of writing code, I think, yeah. Down, 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 down. So we're going to go off of the whole Claude talk, and we're going to talk about other AI things that are super helpful that I learned about that I think you guys and girls could use as well. So we had to talk about this in the past. Shout out Cody, he was the one that first brought up Ollama. But Ollama's sweet. Like, it's super duper cool because it's free. You can run all kinds of models right in your local machine, and you don't have to pay a nickel to the AI overlords. There are things like Gemma 3. Did I say that right? Gemma 3 or Gemma? Gemma 3? Okay. Gemma 3, that's built by Google, right? Yeah, Google. The underlying Gemini model. Mind you, on if you're not running like a desktop that has like a bajillion gigabytes of RAM, you might want to pull like 4 or 12. But if you got a giant, how much gigs of RAM do you have? By the way, that's your bottleneck when you're working with these locally, is your RAM.
VRAMs.
32 gigs.
32 gigs? Okay. I think maybe I'm at 16. I can't remember.
It's almost a billion to a gig. It's almost one-to-one like that. Like that's about 12.
So this would be 27
That's like 27
gigs of RAM.
And then as you increase your context, all the models do it a little bit differently, but they have some different like multiple that would go as you increase context. So you can turn that to 64 or the 27 pretty easily by giving it a big context.
Also decrease the quantization if on like smaller machines, and then increase the context.
Yeah, there's a combination of things and like a big old grid you can use to try to fit the perfect one into your grid.
I'd love to hear more about that at the end here. That sounds sweet. And then there's this other one I saw called Quencoder. That's like Alibaba's like coding. I mean, if you want to code on your machine, check out one of these. I think Facebook has one too, or Meta. There's a bunch of different ones out there. But yeah, about how to fit it. I've tried it too. What's cool about this is like I drove up to go visit family in northern Nevada, which means 3 hours of no internet. But I was still using AI to help me code because my wife wouldn't let me drive. Even though I like driving, but she was like, I'm going to drive, and I was like, fine. There's also this cool website called There's an AI for that. So if you're thinking about, let me go build a model, don't. Like, go here first and check, is there an AI for that? So in my case, I was looking at like an image recognition one specifically for trading cards to like grade cards or whatever. And sure enough, there was one. But I think the most useful thing about this website is not going and searching models, but it's actually their newsletter. Whoever's making those newsletters every month is actually really on top of the whole AI stuff. So every month I get, or week maybe even, I get this email that has a bunch of cool things about AI going on. And this just how, again, with how fast things are moving, this newsletter kind of helps keep me up to date. If you want to learn more about Claude code, like this is the video I watched where I learned about Super Claude and some of the guys who are behind Claude code that give some really great advice. But one thing I wanted to share that's super cool, like for this talk, although I did watch this video, I wanted to recap, because I actually learned it in this video, that you can copy the YouTube link, go to Gemini. Since Gemini is Google, owned by, they own YouTube, you can literally paste in a YouTube video and say recap this. It'll go scan the entire video and give you highlights from videos. So let's say there's like a 3-hour-long course or something, ain't nobody got time for that. You can go and just use this to go scan it and give you highlights from the videos, which is insane, right? Again, kind of a Gemini only thing because they got the whole YouTube thing going on, but super cool. And in fact, anytime it comes to generating video or images, I always use Gemini first. For some reason, they do not care about copyright. I've gotten it to I was like, make me a Pikachu, and it made one. I've gone to ChatGPT to make me a Pikachu. It did not look like Pikachu, right? So for some reason, either they don't care, or I don't know. Who knows what's going on? But VO3, I've made some videos with VO3 as well. Amazing videos. Now, mind you, it's only as good as a prompt, going back to the prompt. But there was this guy who, I should throw this in here. I should make notes. But he made an IKEA commercial. And what would have been like a $3 million commercial for some video graphics designers to go make, he made in like 18 minutes or something like that. And it was an outstanding commercial. It was this box that exploded and all this IKEA furniture got put together. It was outstanding. So I think it's like $100 a month for the VO3 thing, but it's worth it, especially if you make content and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I actually asked it, like, hey, give me the, not only give me what's in this, but like, tell me some slides you would make about this video. So that was pretty sweet. And then like I told you guys earlier, I use Gemini a lot as my first go-to when I'm dealing with technical errors outside of code, right? Like if you're just dealing with something like the Let's Encrypt thing I was running into yesterday, I was using Gemini to kind of walk me through it. And sure enough, I mean, it's like this movie Pi. It's like a really low budget movie by Darren Aronofsky, but the guy throughout the movie says, let me restate my assumptions. Like sometimes the rubber ducky method of talking to a rubber duck, now you get to talk to AI, helps you think about a problem a different way. This is super cool if you are using AWS or any sort of hosting in general. That's a big one. There's like AI built into a lot of these now. So for example, AWS has something called Amazon Q. If you look up in the top right corner, I didn't even notice this until one day I kind of stumbled across it, but that little symbol up there is Amazon Q. If you open this up, you can start asking prompts in Amazon and it will actually go and scan your AWS environment and stuff like that. So I'm enough to be dangerous in like this stuff, but like, for example, like networking, I'm not like a super genius at. Like layer 3, layer 4, I don't know what that means, but now with this, you can kind of be enough to be dangerous. And like in this case, I said, go check my access logs in my network. I don't know where the network load balancer is or where the access logs are. Can you tell me? And it kind of give me like a list of where to actually go look. This will even guide you actually to making changes as well. So super cool. Microsoft Azure has their own. They have Copilot built in. Have you used Copilot? I'm sure they make you use that. Yeah. How do you feel? Is it pretty good about giving you good feedback? I feel like Amazon Q does a pretty good job, but I've never had experience with the Azure side of things.
We get to cheat because a lot of the Copilot stuff allows you to configure it, and so we're using Claude 4.1 and 4.0
So underneath, yeah, that's what I've heard about Copilot. It kind of cheats underneath the hood. It can use good models to do stuff. So
Also, when you're using the consumer-grade Copilot models, don't quote me on this, but it's something I have heard going around like internally, is apparently it will change the model depending on what your ask is. So like if you're in Microsoft Office and you're like, hey, I need you to do, like create me slides to do this stuff, it'll do like a text style prompt. But if you're like, hey, generate me an image to kind of showcase this, it'll swap over to a different model for image generation.
which makes sense, right? Use the best model for the job, sort of thing. And even going back to those Olama models, if you go to huggingface.io or .com, don't ask me why it's called huggingface.co. Hugging Face is named weird, but it's actually like, think of it as like a GitHub repository of open source AI models. So the Quinn and the ones that I was showing you, if you just go to Hugging Face and search something. For example, in my last AI talk, I did one about image generation on your local machine. So like just generating images with what you got for free. There's some specific image generation model I pulled down from Hugging Face that did quite a good job about building images, especially for free anyway. And then, of course, in GCP, they've got Gemini, which is, I haven't used it, but it's there. So if you use GCP, probably a good idea to go use. This open router, you told me about this, didn't you? Okay, what is it? Because I threw it in here and I forgot already.
If you want to put 50 or $100 somewhere, I would put it into open router.
Okay, right.
It has caching. It's got access to many different models across the board. It has the automatic routers and things. You can use it with stuff like Client inside of Visual Studio. So it's got like open API access to all of these models, and all the models are available from it. And they all have pricing based off of the provider. So you could actually go in and prefer a certain type of provider. So you can get your Claude from Azure instead of getting your Claude from someone else.
Yeah, and you can configure just one API key, the Open Router API key, and use all these models. And they have a substantial number of free models.
Yeah, a heck of a lot of free models. They do rate limit on them, but then also all your money's in one place, and you're not like, oh, I have $50 in Claude and $10 over here. You can have all of your money in one place.
They also provide a lot of stats, so you can see what applications are using what models at what rate, and you can see what trends are.
They
and you
do.
can be like, oh, this is interesting. A lot of people who are doing, like role play or whatever are using this model,
And
or
people
who are doing
blindly-
coding are using that model.
They blindly, like GPT-5 and stuff, they blindly release them on Open Router to test them, to see how they line up against other ones. So like GPT-5's released there first under a code name, and then it's just one of their free models. And because there's so much throughput, it's the best place to really test
Yeah,
it.
this is the number one place I'd say for commercial models because it's provider agnostic, and Hugging Face is the number one place for free models.
Yeah. So if you want all of your code to be routed to the CIA first and then to the model, no, I'm joking. Though this is cool. Probably is a hell of a lot cheaper than $200 a month to just get Sonnet. Like having the ability to switch maybe.
It's cheaper. That's one thing that's weird. Like all of your money is
Oh.
access to all of them, but I think that if anything,
It might end up
It's like saying, what's cheaper, McDonald's or buffet? Depends on how hungry you are.
True. Okay. Right.
McDonald's or Uber Eats.
Right. How much of a power user are you? Yeah. Because that's what I've noticed. Like when I've got time and I'm just crushing code, I'm using Claude like crazy. But there'll be like a day I don't code or whatever. I mean, yeah. So.
They also have a chat interface, by the way. So you can go to Open Router, and you can go log into your account, go to the chat interface, and then you could like have two models and ask the same prompt, almost like they do with that one. I forget what it's called.
Oh, and it'll give you both the
They'll
responses.
give you both responses.
That's
so you
cool.
can see which is better and stuff.
Interesting. I signed up for this and immediately regretted it, but I heard a whole bunch of things about Super Grok or Grok 4, which is like Elon Musk's like X deal, which, yeah, I mean, if you want an edgy model, then maybe, but I didn't like it. I literally tried to use it. I've been seeing a bunch of things like it's the best thing ever, but I didn't get great responses